Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Congratulations for getting here on time. Remarkable. Many of us will remember the Moroccan rugs and the food around here last night. It's quite extraordinary how it's been transformed, so extraordinary that publicists have done this. My job is to make sure between now and 10:30 that there's real takeoff from this annual meeting. My job is merely to facilitate and make sure you get to that takeoff point by 10:29, and then miraculously there'll be Fareed Zakaria with his program over there, and you can just spin round and go and sit over there if you choose to do so. Right. What are we going to do? Well, this really is about takeoff. It's about ensuring that there is a clear message from this annual meeting, and I think it's important that I read to you the kind of things that Klaus was saying right at the beginning, because this is about drawing together a lot of loose ends so there is that clear message. And Klaus at the beginning said that this meeting needed to be a wake-up call to overhaul our institutions, our system, and above all, our thinking, adjusting our values to the needs of a world that rightly expects a much higher degree of responsibility and accountability. And that's what I want to try and get from you in the next hour and a half. And he concluded, people sensing that their leaders have let them down, they now look to these leaders, corporate, political and societal, to repair the damage. So the assignments that you will have on the table are designed to do that. Let me just take you through where we'll try and get to in the next hour and a half. This is the introduction at the moment. Then a round table. There are Global Agenda Council chairs on each of the tables. Those who've been actively involved in this, certainly through the Dubai process and now through the last 5 days here. And their aim is to try and push even harder on those issues which you are facing on the table. The idea is it's a boardroom style discussion. Let's change the slide, please, because the topics will be this. Tables 1 and 2 over here will be discussing the world economy. Tables 3 and 4, the global challenges. I'll come back to the detailed questions in a moment. Tables 5 and 6, global cooperation. Tables 7 and 8, business leadership. And finally, 9 and 10, the ideas and new concepts that have to come forward. It's very freewheeling, but it needs to be very focused. And the aim, after about 40 minutes of discussion, is you'll see there's a coloured card there. It's pretty brutal, this. That we want to try and get that message from your table in literally 5 words. Not easy, but it's good. If you're a headline writer on a newspaper, you can do it. But the reason why often that works better, and obviously if you want to put more on it, that's fine, is that then at least there's absolute clarity, certainly in the choice of words that you have. Then we will collect those cards and try and get some order out of them, and while that is going on, the co-chairs of the meeting will share with you their thoughts about what has happened and how it has happened and the way forward. Then we will have an open discussion. Now, can we move on with the slides and just underline what the detailed questions are so you all know the kind of questions that are being addressed. Could we move on again, please? Right. On tables 1 and 2, what must the G20 do first to get the world economy back on track? Secondly, on 3 and 4, what global challenge most threatens the economic recovery? 5 and 6, are governments equipped to avert a deeper crisis of confidence in global governance? If not, what should they do? 7 and 8, what must industry do to prevent a broad social backlash? And finally, 9 and 10, what ideas and new concepts will drive future growth? You all know what the basis is for these discussions, and I think it's important that you know, each of you on each table, what other tables are considering in this time available. Right, so anyone got any questions? Do you need further clarity at this stage? Or should I invite you to get on with the discussion? Any voices from anywhere? About 40 minutes would be helpful, Simon. You can do it in 20 if you like. I'll be prompting you how to focus your time a little further on. Okay, well look, let me encourage you to get down, introduce yourselves, move forward. This really is about creating an engine room of discussion with absolute clarity for 10:30. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Not a lot of time left. Could I urge you to complete your discussions, please? Let's move on. We have 45 minutes left to bring together the essence of the 6 groups. So if you haven't quite finished your coloured chart, your coloured 5 words, please could you get it over there as quickly as possible. Roughly about 6 minutes for each of these 6 assignments. Firstly, what must the G20 do first to get the world economy back on track? Can I just underline, everything's on the record here, and the record is rather important because that record will go forward to help provide the consensus message that's coming out. That's why this is the takeoff moment. Who is on table 1? Is it Ricardo? Ricardo, can you just give us an essence of what...
Well, there are many long-term issues that the G20 meeting could tackle, but we're in an emergency situation. So we wanted them to tackle things that are urgent, to be urgently addressed, and that could not be addressed by each country individually. So all the countries that can are planning fiscal expansions. But many countries can't plan fiscal expansions because they don't have access to liquidity. They don't have access to funding because the international financial market has seized. So what we want is to give all the countries in the world the capacity to coordinate in this global fiscal expansion by capitalizing the IMF, capitalizing the World Bank, capitalizing the regional development banks, and have those institutions give financial resources to the developing world so that they can also participate in this global reflation. Now, we also think that it is very important that as this global reflation happens, that all countries commit to apply non-discriminatory policies so that they don't surreptitiously use fiscal policy as a new form of protectionism. In fact, we would love to see a quick conclusion of the Doha round, but at least we would want all the countries to agree not to increase protectionism at present.
Do I understand have we got the words not quite in the right order? Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
No, we want to stimulate globally, and we need to capitalize multilateral financial institutions so that that global stimulus can happen. Yeah, we're table 2. We're up there. We're now at table 2.
That's where we're at. Right.
Yeah.
Let me clarify. Now.
Yeah. So now you got it.
Let me introduce you to table 2. And to clarify,
yeah.
your table.
Yeah.
Your table 1.
Yes.
Stimulating. Yeah, not anymore.
They made a mistake up there.
I think we need a clear message from this meeting.
Well, you know, it's like the financial crisis. They don't get the numbers right.
Right. Let's try then table 1. Cheng Sui, please. I apologize for that, but as you can see, we're trying to do things incredibly fast
and
for your benefit as much as anyone.
Five words. First, I think we need the leaders should take commitment to the welfare of the world, of the people all over the world. And most important, the coordination. We are on the same boat. We should not gloat over others' misfortunes. We should not benefit ourselves on others' expense. So we need to coordination and work together to find a solution for the crisis. And the first half of this year may be most difficult time for the world and for China because the stimulus package takes some time to show their effect. So we need to care to the poor people. We need to at least let one family has one job, and also we need to take some measures like in China. We ordered the state-owned enterprise don't lay any people off. And we encourage the private sector to have the work sharing. That means to cut salary voluntarily to provide a job, split a job for two people.
Thank you.
Certainly we need confidence, and finally we need consensus. We need the mutual trust. So we need to fight against protectionism and as well as economic nationalism. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheng Sui. Anand Mahindra, do you want to add anything as a co-chair of the meeting to these 5 Cs?
Well, as you saw, we had an economist and a former minister of government, so we found a wonderful loophole to your draconian constriction of 5 words, because each of those 5 words has 100 sub-words, as Cheng Sui told you. So I think
Have you got them there?
Well, I'm just adding one more C, creativity, which I think is brimming, overflowing in our table here. But I just wanted to add one more point that came up from Louis Ferland here. And I think he said very forcefully that we have to find a way of getting countries, the G20 countries, and the companies within them to commit to employment retention. Now, there's difficulties in that, but if the G20 can tell everybody this is a time where analysts and investors should not penalize companies for lower returns on capital if you are creating employment retention, if there are incentives that can channel finance to those companies that do commit to such things, however implausible and impractical that sounds, I think it will galvanize confidence in a lot of countries. We all felt very strongly about employment retention as being one of the keys to maintaining stability and preventing social unrest.
Okay, that's in another group as well. Jeroen van der Veer, do you want to just add as a co-chair? Here, please. Any comment?
I think the best is that you see, it is very much aligned, but you see that when you see the 5 words of our table.
Fine.
Let's wait.
Maria, do you want to come in at all with anything on those particular issues? Maria Ramos, co-chair as well of the meeting.
I wanted to just emphasize the issues that Ricardo made on the G20, because I really think that this is the time for us to see courageous leadership on the part of the G20 leaders, particularly when it comes to the multilateral institutions. I think we really do need to see scaling up of those institutions, because there are many countries who can't afford to do the fiscal stimulus on their own. And we're talking a lot about coordination, and I think it is now time to do that coordination. We also need to make sure that all of the things we're saying about regulation and College of Regulators, or whatever form this is going to take, this is the time to do it. The time for words is over. It's time for action and implementation.
All right, we're just waiting for the other table messages to be pulled together over there. Anyone else want to add? It seems to me we've now got 7 Cs, to which, to the 5 of the table, we should add courage and capitalisation. There is a convergence there. Does anyone want to come in with any other suggestions of what needs to be done? Another C, perhaps?
Yes, we actually have quite a lot of Cs.
On this particular issue, I'm sorry we can't put it up, but we're trying to write the other messages out on the PowerPoint at the moment.
But would you like us to wait until...
well, not from your table. I just wonder if you want to add anything to this particular subject.
I'll wait and add our Cs to our...
All right. Anyone else, please? I can't see anyone. How are we doing? Okay, 1 minute. Okay, we are... What's the message? Is a finger going up? Is that a thumb or a finger? Okay, let's go to table 7 and 8 on business leadership. What has come out there, Lee, from the two... What are the 2 messages there, please? We are trying to do things incredibly quickly.
I can read it out. I will help you.
All right, well, I tell you what, Jeroen van der Veer, why don't you tell us from table 8? We have it?
Okay. Shall I finish now? This table 8, we compromised on 10 words. Yeah? You can read it yourself. But it is a rebalance needs of societies, companies and employees through transparency, sustainability and servant leadership. What I would like to add to that is that if you have, we said for many years, shareholder value, and shareholder value. And then if that system comes into a crisis, then it is very logical that those other stakeholders, or the multiple stakeholders, they say, hang on, you can't all the time try to optimize the system in one way. So you have to rebalance that, and if you don't rebalance that, then you get a social backlash. So it is servant leadership for more than only shareholders.
Any greater clarity on rebalancing, Jeroen?
Rebalance is that I think it is simply stronger than there was always a balance between, say, shareholders, customers and employees and paying taxes. But that balance has proven over the past crisis that that balance is not okay. So you have to rebalance that. And if you rebalance that, that's a task, task of companies and governments.
All right. Who was the spokesperson for 7, please? Martin.
Thanks, Nick. What doesn't come through here is the use of the acronym, GREEN. We sort of debated. We formed a new ad agency here this morning.
Have you bought it?
Not yet. Depending on the response from the clients here,
What offer are you making?
Sorry?
What offer are you making? What's on the table?
Low valuations. Okay. Low valuations.
And what does no BS mean?
Well, actually, we had a big debate. Can I just back up a second? The key issue is employment. We're talking about social backlash. Everybody on the table thought maintenance of employment, improvement in employment, filling unfilled jobs was the absolute critical issue. The rebalancing point is interesting because we were talking about rebalancing business and government. So that's really the governance point and the responsibility point and the employment point. Entrepreneurship, we think, is key because if we have green objectives or sustainable objectives, so that's more than 5 words, that will be a problem. No BS really goes down to what I would call the bleeding heart issue. If this is going to be disseminated from the forum, I think the danger is a lot of people out there will say this is too much down the non-profit area. So we were trying to say what we're trying to do here is genuinely, strongly try and initiate plans and programs that without spinning it, without trying to be too airy-fairy about it. So no BS means, the other word we had was now, because moving now is important. I should also say that Mario and others felt it was very important. We used the word flagellation, contrition, remorse. We actually had self-flagellation, right? But it was either flagellation or self-flagellation. That's what I thought. But that really came out in the governance and responsibility area too. So green, and that's the 5 words. We stuck to our brief. No bullshit. Well, clearly Sunday morning is not a good time.
Martin, we can take it. Thank you. How are we doing on the next ones? Okay. Does anyone want to add something very quickly? Again, I apologise. I'm pushing you very hard. Please.
Yes, I just want to pick up the point. One idea I had was that every chief executive of the Fortune 500 should put $2 million into a remorse fund that would be funding social entrepreneurship activities. So $1 billion, because I think that the credibility of the business leadership to speak on any of the constructive partnerships that are needed is 0 at the moment, and unless there is some tangible act of contrition and actually positive contribution by that community, you're not going to be able to be listened, and we need to actually hear the business voice more clearly now than at any time, because government is in danger of overreacting, I think.
Can I just check with both your tables? Do you think that this is a very serious challenge, the social backlash? Yes. Okay, there's a real consensus here on that, right across everyone here. Please.
Well, I was just interviewed by Bloomberg, and I'm part of the religious group here. So the first question was, do the bankers come here to redeem themselves?
We're talking about the G20 meeting, though, as opposed to here necessarily. What the message is going forward.
So that, and I said that, well, I hope that we all have come here also to do some repentance. That means that we cannot change the past, but we can change the future, and I very much applaud that an action that is suggested, like the 2 million, an action would really be very important, because it's searched for, and it will build up trust.
Right, let's move on. Table 3 and 4. Great. Global challenge. Which one most threatens the economic recovery? Who's from 3, please? Brian, are you? Okay. And then I'll come to 4, please.
We were speaking about the idea that despair contagion, that the filter through which we're all talking about this is going to build and build and build, and that potentially could lead to political and institutional failure. We were having dinner last night with some friends, and we didn't know about the $18 billion in bonuses that have gone to executives in the financial industry in the United States, and we were sort of dumbfounded by that, and it caused people who would otherwise not believe in sort of social reaction to this. I had people around the table who I'd never would think would do this, and suddenly they are. So we're just concerned that the 2 points you wanted to make were the idea that despair will continue, and we need to find ways to return and build confidence. Otherwise, this will just sort of spiral.
Thank you, Brian. On 4, please.
I have to admit we had a very extensive discussion about the question and whether or not the focus only on the economic recovery doesn't actually limit the extent to which the challenges go far beyond the immediate responses to the economic recovery, and in fact require responses on a whole variety of levels, ranging from energy to climate change to water security to a variety of the challenges that transcend the immediacy of the moment. And we did, despite our reservations about sound bites, deliver our 5 words with respect to the absence of unprecedented global collaboration. And we expressed some reservations that there are so many expectations on the G20 meeting that it still will have a huge challenge to deal with the social backlash that is already there, and the temptation politicians will have to address that backlash in their domestic environments and not focus exclusively on the broader global challenge to create global governance. And we looked at the threat as well. We looked at a threat analysis in which some key words came out in our circle that we thought encapsulated the moment: panic reactions, nationalism, protectionism, short-termism, and that all these concepts in and of themselves also pose a significant threat.
Social backlash again came up very specifically on both your tables, did it?
Very strongly.
This is a very clear message which I'm picking up in these first 3 groupings. Does anyone want to add anything on this, which is perhaps missing? 5 words is very tough, I know, and others have pushed it. But are there other things that you feel are missing from here? Is there anyone over there? I can't see in the dark, actually. Okay. Brian, do you want to? Moses, please. Behind you.
2008 will go down in history as a year in which the financial crisis started and will continue. 2009 will be the year of political crashes. Around the world, and we're already seeing it in Iceland, we see it in Latvia, in England, and so on, we are seeing all sorts of upheavals created by the conditions. When the economic conditions and the economic malaise starts biting families and people that don't have jobs, that will have huge political repercussions. And in general, the main threat is that governments are not designed to move as quickly and as fast as this crisis is requiring. And the political upheavals are going to make them even slower, or they're going to push them into wrong decisions or feel-good decisions or populism, nationalism, and all the bad tricks that are in the toolkit of politicians when things got very hard. So we believe that that kind of situation is the main threat to the recovery.
So it's the political capacity to handle this? And the capacity of governance as well?
There is no doubt that there will be social consequences to the crisis. And the social consequences will inevitably have political repercussions. And that will then have consequences for the recovery.
Does anyone disagree with that or want to qualify it or characterize it in a different way? Because that's a very, very serious message as well, apart from the social backlash. Please, yes.
Definitely, there are going to be job losses, and there is no way any particular government can simply try to subsidize all that. So one important area that we've been talking about making some difference is the green area, and some countries and some companies have technologies. At this time, if this technology is decimated to the rest of the world, a whole new area of creating jobs could happen, and we could also address another serious concern, that's the planet. And this could, in a big way, offset the job losses.
All right, thank you. Anand, Maria, and Jeroen, do you want to add anything? And one here as well, particularly about this challenge on political leadership.
I'm wondering why we don't mention about protectionism at this point of time. I think protection is a very issue which threatens the economic recovery at this time.
Okay, fine. Maria? Particularly this political point as well, and protectionism. Yes, indeed.
Well, I wanted to say on the political point that it is precisely because of that we are going to require a different set of responses, both from the politicians in the way that they make decisions about the global institutions, because it requires a different set of behaviors and a different set of a different record when it comes to implementation. And I can't stress that more. It's about implementation now. If 6 months from now, a year from now, we come back and we're still talking about the same thing, we will have failed. And the social unrest out there that we have to deal with will be absolutely dramatic. This is not the time for dilly-dallying. It's not business as usual.
Thank you. Jeroen, Anand,
I'd like to add a bit more on this political point. Whilst I follow your logic, I would like to this glass half full, half empty. And let me first say that in most countries so far, the respect of the population for governments has increased. Take, for instance, the UK, the United Kingdom, take France, take the Netherlands, take, of course, US. There was a change of government. And why has the respect for governments increased? Because, by and large, most governments acted quite promptly and quite decisive. So that is an interesting point. So in a crisis you think the politicians would lose grip. Now, of course, we have all our ideas how to take it forward, but so far a lot of people think probably more positive about their governments than half a year ago. Secondly, that creates an opportunity, because what is the basis now? Laissez-faire, just shareholder value, doesn't work. I don't think that there are many people who like to go back to communism or to 60s and 70s. So there is now an opportunity to find, and then I'm back in my rebalancing story, how do governments, companies and employees work together. So this is an opportunity as well to build a better system.
If I quote you correctly, Moses, what you're saying though is that the momentum of what's going on could go so fast that politicians will still be trying to catch up and the speed is out of sync. Quickly.
What I'm saying is that jobless numbers, the unemployment figures are just beginning to rise. And we're just beginning to see, the politics have not beaten yet. So, and that's what I'm anticipating.
Thank you. Right, Anand, quickly. And then I'll go to the next group, 5 and 6.
Nick, there was absolute unanimity at our table that the biggest challenge was a threat of protection. Participants quoted the British striking workers who were agitating for bailouts to insist on the use of British products and steel. There was the quoting of the US bailout, where there was pressure from US steel makers that bailouts to any auto companies should be on the condition that US steel should be used. Of course, our intrepid Brazilian colleague here said that they had an answer to that. Brazil was buying all the US steel companies. But apart from that, of course, the fact, I think, is that the most important thing is concern over what does President Obama believe about protectionism. Everyone here has been trying to interpret Obama's world. And I believe we need to come out with some answers. The U.S. needs to make some very strong statements about where they stand on that issue, and I think that will have a very strong impact on the rest of the countries.
Thank you. Let's move on to 5 and 6, please. Can we move on? There we are. Are governments equipped to avert a deeper crisis of confidence in global governance? If not, what should they do? Picking up on what Moses has said, who's talking from 5? Howard. Yes, it's behind you.
So, first of all, Table 4 was a wonderful lead-in to some of the things that we said in Table 5, when they said absence of unprecedented global collaboration. We have 10 words because we had 2 questions. And so we felt we had the right to sort of have 10 subtext under the 10 words. We thought that was fair. So the answer to the first question, are governments equipped to avert a deeper crisis of confidence in global governments? Our answer was yes, if they work together. And the subtext, which is, if not, what should they do? Here are some of the 5 points that we had. The first were related to values. And we felt that it was very important to have values, equality being one of the values, dealing with poverty, dealing with some of those issues. The second was cooperation. The fact that there's interdependency, there was a requirement for cooperation. The third point was knowledge, and the fact that if we didn't have information, if we didn't have and that information was lacking across countries, and it ties in with cooperation, we'd have a hard time sort of dealing with this issue. The fourth point was leadership. Leadership on many different levels. Leadership at the level of the individual stakeholders, leadership at the national level with the national leaders, and then obviously leadership at a more global level. And so we felt that was an important component. And the final point on trade finance, there was a feeling that the private sector had collapsed with respect to that. There were elements of protectionism, and there was a real need for government institutions and multinationals to come together and deal with those issues.
Did you share Moses' alert on governance, though?
We didn't have an explicit discussion on that, but I think there's a general feeling. We had a very lively discussion. At that point would certainly have come across in terms of the comments, but others in the group may want to comment on that as well.
Does anyone want to? Please, yes, and then I'll go to 6.
Well, we did touch on the political equipment needed to do this in each of these countries, and it got back to this. If they're going to take on huge debt to support the trade finance area, at the same time people are losing jobs, the political heat will just rise, and it will be very difficult for the political leaders to execute.
Right. Table 6. You have...
Nick, there's one other point on our table. Is that okay?
Please do.
I think one of the issues that we raised as well in terms of equality, that there was a great degree of inequality before the crisis, and that going forward we need to consider how does that inequality lessen, and that the plans and the bailouts and all of this ought to consider this domestic issue as well as a way of addressing the kind of upheavals which have the potential to erupt in the aftermath.
Okay, Table 6, you haven't actually answered the question yes or no. Can you help us on that?
Our answer to the question was no. Judged on the basis of their current response, the response of the leaders has been reactive rather than proactive. They've acted at the national level rather than the global level. They've acted partially and subsystem-wise rather than system-wise. So based on that, we feel that our confidence is low in terms of the answer. What is required is first to rise to the level of system, because the current system is broken. And unless it's raised to the level of system, the answers will not work. Second, it has to be raised to the global system level, not to a national level. In 3, the nature of response has to be divided 2 parts. One is how to manage and create a credible story that the public at large and the corporations and governments believe that there is leadership and management in place to lead us forward. And second, to put in place a system to prevent the next phases of the crisis from occurring. Because this is precisely in response to what Moses Naim was saying. Unless there is 2 parts of the system, one, how to manage, and second, to put in place the management system to prevent, this crisis is going to be deeper. And as the bad news comes and response is reactive, confidence would again be lowered. So we need to raise the game to a much higher level.
Before you sit down, do I get from your no answer a sense that governments do not realize how under-equipped they are?
Yes, the governments, by training, after Thatcher and Reagan, the governments were trained to withdraw from management of the market. And second, the governments thought that globalization was a spontaneous process rather than something that needed to be designed and regulated. The capabilities to deal with both of these, first, how to manage huge sums of money when they are given to corporations. Governments traditionally are slow. Now speed is needed. And flexibility and speed in bureaucracies historically have not gone together.
Okay. Let me get some other views. What we're talking about is a convergence of issues here, particularly if there's this deep concern among all of you about a social backlash which governments and the politicians and civil servants will have to manage. Let's get a lot more voices, please. Be patient. There is one other grouping which I've got to go to as well.
To clarify the no, it was influenced by the group international law was discussing, and I like to give especially to the business people clarity. There is global governance, but there is no global government. When you talk about leadership, who are the leaders in charge of the world? No one. The G20 is not in charge of the world. Gordon Brown cares about UK. The votes he receives in UK. So there is no global government, and that is the main problem. And the proposal, I am the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, in the criminal area, they identify genocide is a global problem. Crimes in the streets is a major problem. That you have to need. You need
but what do you mean by global government? No country is going to give up its sovereign rights.
That's the problem. Because the financial system is global, the terrorism is global, there is not the national government stopping the border.
Right. This is 10 minutes before the end, so this is a very critical issue.
Yeah,
but
it's a structural problem.
Can we leave it on the table as a critical issue, because several other people want to jump in? Pass the microphone immediately to your right. No, please. Just hang on a moment, Howard.
I just want to point out, when we talk about governments, we have to be precise about what that is. Many packages came out from the executive branch, and the packages are there. But we have to talk about who is going to implement. There are legislature which these packages will have to go through, and it's taking time in America, in other countries. Or there are the legal rules that prevent the implementation. So by the time the whole package is in place, really, in reality, it's going to take time.
All right.
So we have to be precise about what the government is.
All right.
And it really is a question of democracy.
For the benefit of time, please keep your remarks short. Can you over to VJ, please? 1, 2, 3. I will come to you, but I'm conscious we also have the last two tables too. Please, and keep your remarks short.
Thank you. I think the social backlash issue is a real one for politicians, for the business community, for society at large. And what I could suggest is if we could urge shareholders and rating agencies to change the way they measure corporate performance so that they push the businesses to do well and do good as well. Thank you.
Right. Klaus?
What we have heard until now shows how much we need an integrated effort to redesign our whole global system, but not only the systems, the processes, cooperation and so on. And this will be a process contrary to the Renaissance, which took centuries, which has to be done and implemented in a very short time. We cannot expect too much from the G20 meeting. Let's not forget, it's a technical meeting. If you look at the tasks of the G20, as outlined in the Washington communiqué, it will address some issues, but not really the totality of issues. So what we have to do is to redesign our global system in a proactive, systemic way. And here, I think all around those tables will be called upon. We cannot leave it to one stakeholder group. We all have to work together. And here, the Global Agenda Councils will play a very important role because, as we announced here, we will start such a global redesign initiative in the next weeks. And we will involve all of you. And I can also tell you, we have got the support practically of every politician who was here. starting with Premier Wenchabao, going to Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, to do such an exercise which is absolutely essential for the world. So we will come back to you, and we hope you all will be integrated intensively into this redesign process.
Thank you, Klaus. And obviously we're going well beyond G20. Did you want a word too? And here, please, be very brief, but assume your remarks are being recorded and going on the record.
I think with the global coordination that we're asking for and which is necessary, we have to do it in a way, it's going to have to be done in a way that is transparent enough and efficacious enough, at least as a move in the right direction, for people to feel that they have some stake in it. Okay. If it doesn't, it's going to seem like a deus ex machina from somewhere else, and people will be enraged.
All right, please.
Part of the contagion of despair, which is so destabilizing for governments and which can prompt governments to do the wrong thing, is media-related. And there has to be a conscious outreach to media to try and get some balance in reporting, not just to have the constant downspin of the negative, but to try and balance that with the fact that efforts are being made. Find the good news story. Try and get a little bit of balance out there, because that is one of the things that makes it impossible for governments to do the right thing when they're up against simply a downward spiral of news reporting.
All right, tables 9 and 10, please. Table 9. We're now talking about what ideas and new concepts will drive future growth.
Well, reflecting much of what we heard, our table really reflected the challenges that the Global Agenda Councils took on, everything from the demographic challenge of golden growth with youth growth to the green energy growth, to all of the challenges in the room. And we came to the same conclusion many of you have. It begins with value-based content. We must have an informed public, they must have reliable, accurate information, sometimes uncomfortable knowledge, but that begins then the connectivity that interconnects both sectors and issues, as well as leads us to the kind of courageous experiments that are necessary, the kind of innovative, collaborative, cross-cultural action that is necessary. And if you see, that's our 5 words there. We picked up on the C's, but beginning especially with value-based content that takes advantage of the new media, the new technologies that connect us in ways to new solutions, and taking those new solutions to innovative and cross-cultural.
And do you see a very explicit connectivity with many of the concerns here?
Absolutely. In fact, around our table, which went from sport to religion to environment and demographics, as well as pandemics, in every single one of these subjects, the issue of how informed are we, and then how do we take the information that we have and use it to go to value-based solutions.
Right. Table 10, please. I'll come back to you in a moment, but let me hear from table 10.
We know that we are in crisis. We know that we are in the same boat, but to get out of the crisis, we should know where we are going to go. We need strategic goals. That is essential when getting out of the crisis, that you have strategic goals. That applies companies, that applies nations, but even global economy. We discussed a lot what kind of strategic goals we should set, and we see that the future of the global economy is in sustainability, in knowledge creation, and in higher productivity. And how to do that? I think the words have been mentioned here. Architecture, global governance. We discussed a lot about systemic approach, where top-down and bottom-up approaches will be integrated. That is the message of this group.
Thank you. Over there, and I'd like to ask Maria and Anand at the end as well to just give a very quick summary. We have no more than 5 minutes.
Okay.
Please.
When I speak in English, I am always very brief. I think we have 2 major paradigms. One is the shrinking Earth, but the other is very important, aging of the society. And the shrinking Earth is related to green growth. But we have many technologies being born in the field of to become the aged society very vivid. And so we wish to say platinum growth, or because the silver society have to be vivid. And so we should say like the green growth, the platinum or golden growth we are discussing, I think that two major trends, new industry, will help us get out of the crisis. That is my opinion.
Do either of you on 9 or 10 have an idea about the timeline? Because concepts and ideas can take a long time. Can they be brought forward? Can they be accelerated, please?
Well, I think one of the things we think is very important to understand is that in 2 years' time there'll be 5 billion people connected to telephones and 3 billion people connected to the internet. And the feedback loop mechanisms there are things that we worry that nobody's talked about. There's lots of discussion about the financial services sector, but transparency in a networked world comes from listening to feedback loops out of this new technologies. It's on us now, and we shouldn't close that off by getting too much of a crisis about the banking sector and killing the golden goose in some respects.
Any ideas, any further ideas on timelines and how speedy the new ideas and concepts could come in? Over here, please.
Yeah, this is just a comment. We were charged to give a message to the G20, and it seems to me that we should split our message into two parts in terms of strategy and one of outcomes. In the very short term, recapitalizing the multilateral financial institutions will keep the boat itself from sinking. Regardless of how the chairs are arranged on the Titanic will be going down quickly without massively recapitalizing the multilateral financial institutions. Then secondly, if the boat stays afloat, then we can rearrange the chairs quickly in terms of all these economic, political, and social concerns and strategies which are really going to end up being medium and long-term issues. And then the outcomes are, of course, the disaster at the social level.
One final thought, then Anand and Maria, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to address the question of retooling the incentive system to prevent moral hazard and short-term thinking. So one is a bank who originates a loan should carry about 25% on their books. Secondly, employees and managers should be paid over 5 years with clawbacks. And thirdly, I think there should be criminal punishment and capital punishment for both fraud as well as capital punishment as well as incompetence.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, fine. Does anyone want to go into a plea bargaining now? Right, one final word from 10, and then Maria and Anand, and then we have to hand over to Fareed.
About the timetable, I think we have a good test now in Copenhagen. Copenhagen is a test how this system will work.
Let me leave it there. Maria.
Thanks, Nick. I just want to make the point that we've had over the last few days and this morning again a very rich discussion amongst the leadership, I suppose, coming from across the world, very diverse, from both business, government and the NGO sector and civil society. I think a few things. In the short term, it's clear that we need to focus on implementation and getting a few things done and communicating to the political leadership that we need to see action in a number of areas, getting the multilateral institutions sorted out, properly recapitalizing the IMF and the regional financial institutions, and getting that done and that done quickly. We need to get the Doha round sorted out. G20 said that in November or December when it met, and that needs to be done now. I think from a more medium-term point of view, and from business, we need to get the right incentives in place. It's clear that the values issue is important, and that needs to be measured properly. And going forward, around the table, and Klaus has already pointed that out, we have seen an enormous amount of willingness to get the global agenda councils working with governments also to find solutions to the many issues that have come up.
Thank you very much indeed. Anand and Jeroen has come back quickly, and I know I'm under pressure on time, but please.
Well, Nick, we were mandated when we came here to debate and shape the post-crisis world, and apart from today's discussion, I got the impression that we were still talking about how we're going to muddle through this crisis. That seemed to be where all the effort was going. It was more about inhaling and then waiting to exhale. And my concern is that well, coming from India, let me use a yogic analogy. Yoga involves breathing, which doesn't involve holding your breath till you turn blue in the face. It involves rhythmic breathing of moderate amounts, and that is supposed to be the elixir
All right,
to good
that's
health.
your message, Anand.
That's my message.
All right, rhythmic breathing. Jeroen, you do have 2 microphones now, but just give us one summary, please. And I should underline what Maria said earlier. No dilly-dallying.
Yeah, I still would like to emphasize it came back on various tables, but you need a kind of new dream for the people. And that, I think, the green agenda, it is not only the green agenda, but if you combine that, we are sure that in the coming 40 years, we go from 6 to 9 billion people. They all like to have electricity. They all like to transport themselves. This is a huge challenge. And I think we should use now to get the cent out of the machine, because that is what I think has happened, a cent in the machine. And I think this green picture, building on energy in a sustainable way, can really help as a kind of global message.
All right, thank you very much. I'm not going to summarize. If you do want to speak, I'm sorry, there's nothing more I can ask you to say because we need to turn over to Fareed. I take away 2 important things, the social backlash and the warning there and the clapping that went on and the support for that warning, and also what Moses was saying about governance and the capability of politicians and the systems of governments. Much more to take away. It's all on the record. Thank you all very much indeed. Let me just tell you, Fareed's program will start in 8 minutes now. I've overrun by 2 minutes at 22. So either go and take a seat or go and get a coffee. Thank you all very much indeed.